Thank you for everybody for joining. I think it's Easter Saturday. I was surprised that so many people are online. But yes, let's talk about resilience. It's quite an important thing to have at the moment, I'm absolutely sure about. We've definitely been going through some very strange times during this last year, haven't we? And I wonder how all of you have fared during this COVID period. It certainly struck very suddenly and shockingly, actually, didn't it? So for me, I have to say I was very happy to stay at home most of the time, and I felt I adjusted pretty well. Um, I'm really grateful for Zoom too, because it's kept me in touch with people like us today. We're all together, and I feel we are together. And even though you haven't got your videos on, we could actually speak face to face to people, and giving the course online and giving talks online, having meetings online. We had a sense of togetherness at least. But not everybody has that facility, of course, which is different. I mean, I could keep up with my work for the BKs because you do a lot of computer work. So all is well in my world as far as I'm concerned. But I do know, actually, that a lot of people found it very difficult to be cooped up. Some people perhaps had tricky relationships, so they had to manage that. And the children, and probably working from home, plus schooling. Can you imagine? I'm too old for all that, so I'm jolly glad I don't have that responsibility anymore. There are also old people in homes. They probably didn't understand why they couldn't see their families. And that's pretty tragic, because they were probably very confused and bewildered. So that was sad to really know about that. And of course, the kids, my goodness, their whole education was totally disrupted, and really missing their friends and school life in general. And there's probably much, much more that I haven't even mentioned. So what is resilience? For me, it's that indescribable quality that allows people to be knocked down by life and then come back stronger than ever. They find a way to rise up from the ashes. Psychologists have said some of the factors that make some resilient are having a positive attitude, for instance, one of optimism, and the ability to, what's the word I want? Regulate emotions. That's an interesting one for me, because meditation has helped me so much to get over all the emotional stuff that I had to go through. And then, of course, there's the old favorite, the ability to see failure as a form of feedback, helpful feedback often, and something to learn from. So even after misfortune, resilient people are blessed with such an outlook that they're able to change course and keep going. And there's this lovely story that I heard about, and many of you may know this one, about Thomas Edison. He invented the light bulb, and he had 10,000 failures. Can you imagine? Attempting to make something and you have 10,000 failures. You'd feel pretty down after that, wouldn't you? But there was a newspaper guy who asked him if he felt like a failure and if he should give up after having done over 9,000 failed attempts. Edison simply remarked to him, "Why would I feel like a failure? And why would I ever give up? I now know," and this is the important bit, "I now know definitely over 9,000 ways that an electric light bulb will not work. Success is almost in my grasp." That is resilience. So yeah, resilient people, they can handle anything that comes up. Plus, they seem to recover quite quickly from their difficulties. And I know in the blurb it said, is it inherited or learned? And frankly, I don't know. I suspect it is something you're born with to some degree. But I also believe you can learn to be resilient. If you think about a baby, when it starts to walk, it totters and then collapses. Admittedly, they don't have so far to fall, do they? But what do? They keep at it until eventually they are walking. So determination starts at a very early age. Those people who have it also seem to have an inner strength that allows them to float above difficult circumstances because they maintain determination and good humor, no matter what may arise. I was always a very serious person, although Margaret may have said otherwise, but I used to be very serious. And I've learned not to be so serious, to take things much more lightly, which helps a lot. I would say that probably divorce and bereavement are some of the most devastating experiences. But we know that hundreds of people go through this and they all come back to some sort of normality afterwards. And it takes time, of course. The very interesting thing that I find resilient people don't ask, they don't ask, why me? They understand that stuff happens. It happens to everyone. Let's face it. I bet if I asked you and you all put up your hands at different times, which I can't do here, everyone has gone through some sort of crisis in their life. It could be divorce, a miscarriage, a loss of a loved one, an earthquake, a flood, illness, grief, failure, mistakes, stress, worry, and of course there are lots more, because diversity doesn't discriminate. I think we're being fed socially that everything should be perfect in this world, but I know we're always constantly disappointed in that. People's expectations are fed by advertising, TV programs, living happily ever after, having a perfect body shape and so on. But life isn't like that, is it? So we agree that resilient people get up after they've been knocked down by life's events. And basically, we bounce back. And we often come out better for the experience. For those of you who did, do you remember when you first learned to ride a bike? You may well have fallen off a couple of times, but you kept going until you were comfortable and enjoying the freedom. And that takes resilience. There are two words, faith and optimism. And I feel that's a lovely quote I found is, faith and optimism is a young boy who takes an umbrella out with him, knowing that it won't stop the rain, but it helps him to stay dry when it does rain. I have a story that I read recently. It's about an attitude change, which I think is useful. And this story said someone who during World War II was captured with a couple of other friends. They'd been fearful of being captured, as you would, wouldn't you? And now feared what would happen next. So this guy decided to change their mindsets, their attitude. And so instead, he decided to give them hope by saying, look, for the past few weeks, we've been worried and frightened of being captured. Now, let's live in hope of becoming free. Just a tweak. And a whole atmosphere in life can change. I can think of recent events. Well, now it doesn't seem like so recent, but the Grenfell fire here in London. There's the refugee crisis from the Middle East and Africa. These things actually bring people together, bring communities closer together. It was lovely at a women's event. I met a very, very special person called Natasha. She is amazing. She was part of the Grenfell story because it was her home and she and her children lived there. After the fire, it was she, Natasha, who brought together the community. She talked to MPs and told me she could never have imagined herself doing anything like that. She just felt she was an ordinary person. She was working in a hair salon. But her resilience and determination in the face of that disaster brought out the best in her. And she became a champion for the people who'd been devastated by the fire. She cared deeply about all of them. And this shows me that compassion and resilience are both driving forces after tragedy. There's a rather an odd story, silly story really, but it's about a donkey in the well. You may well know it already. This donkey fell into the well, but they couldn't find a way to get it out. The neighbors just didn't know how to help. So they decided, this is rather cruel actually, so they decided to shovel dirt into the well to bury it as the donkey was very old. And so they started. At first, the donkey cried, but suddenly realized that as he shook the dirt off his back, he could step up. And eventually, after thousands of shovel loads, he was able to step out of the well. Amazing. So life is going to shovel all kinds of dirt on us. And like the donkey, I suggest we shake it off and step forward. Because all these troubles actually are stepping stones. They are for me anyway. Have you heard of Teflon? Teflon coated pans and things like that? There are some people who seem to be Teflon coated. Nothing sticks to them. I wonder if you're one of them. Although I'm resilient, I'm actually consider myself pretty resilient. I'm definitely not Teflon coated. Things do affect me. They do affect me, definitely. But with spirituality, I'm learning to become more and more resilient. There's a great quote I found. Man never made any material as resilient as the human spirit. And we'll talk a lot more about the human spirit in a bit. And it is the spirit that I now understand much more about because of Raj Yoga, the meditation that is taught by the Brahma Kumaris. Definitely there are spiritual laws that help us to heal. And we are fully capable of healing old wounds. And we can reverse the damage of our past adversity. Most of this stuff stays in our minds, in our subconscious. And I've been learning how to deal with that subconscious stuff quite deeply in the last year, using this quiet time or quieter time that we've had, although it's been quite busy. I've used this time to look at those things in the past and wondering how I can heal them. So think about where we are with adversity and where spirituality can help us. If I have right thinking, the right training of the mind, And I begin to notice when negative thoughts start coming into my mind. We have an expression, SOS, so that I don't spiral down, but uplift myself with positive thoughts. So SOS means I step back from something that might be happening to me, and I observe, and then I steer. And so I steer myself. If I feel there's some negativity happening and I'm getting unhappy about something, I will look at myself, step back from it, and say, what's going on here? What's going on? And then, because I'm at a Y, I can take left or right path. I choose to take the path with the positivity in it. And that helps so that I don't spiral down, I spiral up. So I feel better without question. So if you make a mistake, do you spiral into low self-esteem and get a little depressed even? Or are you an optimist and let go of the mistake? Maybe even learn from it. And do you let it go and move on? So the key to getting over our mistakes is to build our inner reserves so that you can deal with them. Failure happens, we know that. But with a new and better perspective and understanding, it will allow you not to be devastated by them. Of course, mistakes can be embarrassing, costly even, sometimes unpleasant. But your inner resilience helps you to overcome that. And it is the spiritual resilience that we want to cultivate. So in my studies with Raj Yoga, and of course now I teach it, so that helps me to learn more and more. Every time you teach something, you learn something. So in my studies, I learned to use what we call spiritual powers. I learned them and put them into practice. And it's definitely improved my resilience to whatever's thrown at me, even now. We have 8 in particular, some of you will know them, but I will draw on others as well as some of those 8, the ones that I think might help us become more resilient. So the first one is the power to withdraw. And I say to myself, is my thinking very complicated? Am I over-analyzing? Probably. We need simplicity in our thoughts because we tend to overthink everything, or a lot of us do. It is so true that more energy comes from being quiet and allowing natural wisdom to flow. People find that very odd because usually energy is people speaking, laughing, doing things. But actually, the more quiet I am, the more power and energy I have. So I use that SOS again and again and again, every time I'm confronted with something. Stand back, observe, and then steer myself in the right direction. Hopefully in an optimistic or uplifting, positive direction. I've found that just by allowing things to carry on without me interfering, things often work out a lot better. It's a matter of ego that I always wanted to interfere because I thought I knew better. I knew how things should be. But had I known about all this when I had my children, young children, I would have I would have let them get on with stuff a lot more. But, there was always this taking of sides, even if it was subtle. So I regret not knowing some of this stuff. But I want to tell you a story. I'll read it to you because it's a very good story. One day, a man found a butterfly cocoon, and as he sat there, a small opening appeared. He watched the butterfly for several hours as it struggled to force its body through the little hole. Then it seemed to stop making any progress. It appeared as if it had got as far as it could, and it could go no further. So the man decided to help the butterfly. With a pair of scissors, he snipped the remaining bit of the cocoon. The butterfly then emerged easily. But something was strange. The butterfly had a swollen body and shriveled wings. The man continued to watch because he expected at any moment the wings would enlarge and expand and the body would contract in time. But neither happened. In fact, the butterfly spent the rest of its life crawling around with a swollen body and deformed wings. It was never able to fly. What the man in his kindness and haste did not understand was that the restricting cocoon and the struggle required for the butterfly to get through the small opening of the cocoon was nature's way of forcing fluid from the body of the butterfly into its wings. Then it would be ready for flight after achieving its freedom from the cocoon. Sometimes struggles are exactly what we need in our life to grow, learn, and acquire essential life skills. If God allowed us to go through life without obstacles, that would cripple us. We would not be as strong as we could be. Not only that, we would never be able to fly. Sorry, my battery's going on my laptop. A very sad story, but a very telling story. So let me not interfere. Let me just stand back and watch. I mean, obviously, if something's going to happen that's a disaster, somebody's got a knife or whatever, you call the police, and so you would interfere. But it does take courage to keep quiet when you're itching to say or do something, because we have so much ego. Always check, what energy am I putting out? Am I appreciative or critical? Let me make sure that when I do speak, that it's always positive. The BKs have a wonderful practice, which is to always give good wishes and pure feelings, even when you don't totally agree with what's going on. And we often don't agree with what's going on. But it does help to create an atmosphere of peace. And the world is crying out for peace right now. So the next power is to let go. I talked earlier about letting go. We have a terrible habit of hanging on to things in our minds, and this is draining us, doing us no good at all. If someone had said something hurtful to me, and I can look at it in several ways. The first way I can look at it, if I'm mature enough, I can say, well, they're in pain, and it wasn't directed at me personally. I just happened to be the next person they come across. That's a very benevolent way of looking at it. But often we can't feel that benevolence. Or I can let it come back again and again and again into my mind, keeping me feeling upset, even angry. But this weighs me down and makes me irritable, difficult to be around. and dare I say it, even boring. You know, do you have a friend who goes on and on and on about the same old story? It gets very boring, doesn't it? Well, I find it does. How much patience do you have to keep listening to them? So one thing you can do is to help them change their minds. Suggest a solution even. The other thing about letting go is that it takes courage. We hang on because we fear of letting go. But once you try it and have the faith that all will be okay, it's amazing how free you become. Trust is a big factor. I've learned to trust so much more now because I know that life will take care of me one way or another. However, there's a big caveat to that. It may not be the way I want it to be, but it is always the right way. I discover that when I look back over the past, that something I had gone through and I thought was terrible at the time, I can see all the pluses in the end. So we can let go by putting a full stop to all that mental activity that goes on in this little old mind. And all we need is one simple thought and keep repeating it. I am a being of peace. Thought creates consciousness. So if we repeat this phrase slowly and carefully, our thoughts and emotions stop expanding and inner peace is restored. The essence of our being is peace, actually. Complete freedom from overload. I have this lovely little story, another story. I love telling stories. There was two women chatting over a cup of tea. And one said to the other how frustrated she was getting because her teenage daughter was always borrowing her hairbrush and never putting it back. She went on and on and on and on about this until her friend got fed up and said, why don't you buy her own brush? Problem solved. The answer was so simple, and yet the first woman was so caught up in her way of thinking, she couldn't see it. It is so interesting to see sometimes, to take a look and see what you're holding on in your mind. Are you still upset about something that happened 10 years ago? Imagine carrying that around with you for all that time. It's a burden that gets heavier and heavier as time goes on. So get rid of it. Why keep it there? It's worth looking at yourself to see what it is that you keep in your mind and what comes back to you. Because it's amazing how much freer we are when we let go and live in the now, live in the present. We do worry about the past and we do worry about the future, but we spend very little time in the now. And for me, this moment is the only moment I need to think about. The rest is taken care of. So another power is the power to tolerate. We need the ability to bounce back with this one. To understand it, it's helpful to realize first that if I start to complain or moan or cry when someone says any little thing to me, then I don't have tolerance. I've worked out that there are 3 grades of tolerance. I can endure a situation, 1. I can adapt and deal with a situation using a lot of effort to tolerate. Or 3, I can use spiritual power to glide through it, not even really noticing that I'm tolerating anything. That's spiritual power. It's an interesting fact that someone can be absolutely amazed that what they've said have been taken so badly. They just don't get it. They say harsh things to others, but they can't tolerate being told anything themselves. That often happens. So tolerance requires many virtues, but one is patience. An important one is patience. Because when you're impatient, it spoils the atmosphere and diminishes spirituality. It was actually one of the first things I had to learn. Impatience was my middle name. I was always expecting to do things quickly, very fast. Bum, 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 how wrong I was. I just recalling a little thought in my mind as I say this, that I used to walk very quickly. And I think my poor little kids, well, I've got two of them, but they're not little anymore, they're nearly 50. But I used to drag them along and walk quickly, and they had to, little feet had to run and run and run with me. And I never thought about these poor little things having to chase after me because I was walking so quickly. How impatient I was. Horrible, horrible I was. Hopefully I've changed. So each one of us has this great power within us. And tolerance isn't suffering in silence. It means becoming resilient in such an easy and natural way. So much so that I don't even feel I'm having to tolerate. So practice going beyond the influence of negative situations and criticisms, and you'll find nothing disturbs your frame of mind. When stormy winds blow, you become wild and out of control. But take time to dive deep into the sea. Beneath the emotions sit on the top here. But if I go deep, deep, diving into the sea, I can experience a world of stillness and great strength. Then you'll stay unaffected. Like the ocean, life is calm one minute and turbulent the next. And we can't control events any more than we can stop the ocean tides. But we can surf the waves and ride out the storms. If you feel low for any reason, how quickly do you pick oneself up? That's a test of resilience. And I understand now I have some spiritual knowledge. It's helping me to shorten the time it takes me to pick myself up and start again and become cheerful even. That's resilience. So my favorite power, I think, is the power of contentment. But first of all, understand discontentment. Discontent is caused by constant desires. One desire leads to another, and in this way we never, never feel fulfilled. The desires keep coming. Endless desires have made relationships very fragile, especially with this pandemic. A lot of irritability and anger has come out. But contentment is the result of spiritual awareness that allows me to recognize any negativity. It really changes the pattern of my thinking. And peaceful thinking leads to contentment. I have everything I need. I may not have everything I want, but that's a different matter. And then there's the power of silence. There is a part of you that is perfect and pure, untouched by not such good characteristics we've acquired by living in this far from perfect world. And like the deepest part of the ocean, going within, which is what meditation is all about, I have all the resources I need. The resources of where there is total absence of conflict and negativity. My still point within a very turbulent world. Just like the lighthouse on the image that you received for this leaflet. The lighthouse is really solid and stable. But all around, the ocean is going mad. Windy, waves very high. But if I'm still and I can find my stillness in silence, it releases me from my negative programming and conditioning. I can experience my truth and my dignity. And all of this helps keep my mind focused and strong. It's going beyond the mundane world around me and experiencing the love of the divine, the one who is perfect and pure. I understand that I'm like the divine, but I need to dig deep to reconnect with those qualities. And that's what I do in meditation. The power of peace. Daddy Yankee once said, "The force of peace is greater than the atomic bomb, greater than any power the world can produce." I believe her. She was such a great teacher. She left her body last year at the age of 104. Can you imagine? And she taught me so much. So peace is truly available to me. But I've lost it because I've got caught up in all the distractions of this world. My mind was wandering here and there and everywhere and trying to find peace. I'd forgotten that it's already inside me. I hear people saying, "I want peace," but they don't know where to find it. So to create a peaceful world, I have to demonstrate peace myself. So check, are my thoughts self-destructive? Do I blame others for feeling peaceless? Yeah, I used to do that all the time. It's your fault that I feel bad, lost my peace, you make me angry, always blaming something else outside. So peace is made up of several things, amongst which are love, peace, and wisdom. And I don't want to settle for just a little bit of peace. I want to experience total peace. But I think I could go on and on and on, and I think I have to stop for some questions before we have meditation. There's so much more I'd like to say, but I'm not going to. Shall we ask if there are any questions? Hello?
Rosemary,
Yeah.
have a look in your chat box, see if you've got anything in there, because we encourage people to post in the chat, and we usually get quite an ocean, actually.
Okay. Yes, I can read them. Where do the powers stem from within the soul? That is a very interesting question. I think we have to learn about them through Raj Yoga, actually. I had no awareness of all these powers that are inside me until I took the Raj Yoga meditation course. And that really opened up a new world to me, really, really did. And there are so many things that I had no idea about until I took the course. And so, yeah, it's all there within the soul, but we have to remember it. It's we've just forgotten everything. We've forgotten everything that we ever were. And we've been covered up with all sorts of life's tragedies, happinesses, all those sort of things. And those have become important to us rather than the identity of who I really am. And who I am is a soul. And I'm not this body. That was part of what I was going to talk about afterwards, but I feel we're running out of time if there are many. So somebody's asking speak about the other powers aside from the 8. Well, I've done a few. The power of peace, the power of silence, the power of contentment. All of these are powers to me, particularly contentment, because if I'm content, then I have everything. I'm not bothered about other people. I'm not, I have relationships. Of course I do. I have children and I have friends, but I'm not caught up in it all. I'm standing solid on my own 2 feet. I'm independent. And I think that's an important factor. Sometimes get trapped in the past, and from time to time it keeps occupying my mind. What 3 tips, I hope I can find 3, could you give me to keep my inner peace? I think the first thing I would do is say that it's up to me whether I allow someone to affect me or not. If I'm allowing the opinions of other people to influence me, I'm being driven by them. I have no self-power. So that's number 1. I think awareness is a big thing in life. If I'm aware of what's happening in my life, I can decide, I can make a decision, and I have the choice of whether I'm going to be affected by that or not affected by it. And then if I have principles, I want to stick by my principles. For instance, when I became a vegetarian, people thought I was mad. But I'm very happy I became a vegetarian. And also, I felt for the animals that were being slaughtered. So if somebody wanted to say, oh, go on, just have a bit of meat, it won't do you any harm, my principle said, no, thank you, I won't. So I have to stand in my own power. So that's 2 tips. Now I'm struggling to find a third one. Can you wait for a minute? It might come to me. So there's another question. Do you think you could become like Teflon? What's missing? I think knowledge. Knowledge is very important because without knowledge, I wouldn't have found the contentment and the peace that I have found. And it's been more than 20 years that I've been studying this. So it's not an overnight fix, this. But I do feel that I came with a very flat battery of my soul, and I learned a lot of things, but then I needed to find out about the power that comes from God. And he's my lifeline now, to be honest. He gives me power, he gives me strength, he gives me love. And I was missing a lot of love. I hadn't been loved as a child much. And so, I felt rejected in life. I felt all these things. But when I discovered that there is a supreme soul who is my spiritual parent, I call him God. People call him Allah or all sorts of different names. Doesn't matter. It's all the same, really. And he's the Almighty, the power that gives. And when I connect in my meditation with this Supreme Soul, I have great comfort. I feel very blessed, and I can feel that. We'll go into a meditation in a bit. I can feel so much happier that things rub off on me. They don't stick to me like Teflon, anti-Teflon. If you don't have Teflon, the pan sticks, doesn't it? So I want to become like Teflon so that everything drips off me, nothing affects me. I'm aware of what's going on in the world. I'm aware of the dreadful things that are happening to people in the world, all over the world. And I have great compassion and mercy for them. But if I'm going to cry, it's not going to help them. I have to be strong to send them power to come out of their problems. And this is God-given power, I call it. Hope that helps. What about taking justice rather than revenge in the context of a work situation where I feel the victim, but knows could fight the injustice with justice rather than revenge? It's a big topic, Narinda. It's a really big topic. And it's a question of karma too. I believe there is no injustice in this world, and that's a hard thing to swallow. But if I can change my mindset and look for the positive in the situation somewhere along the line, we don't need to, if you're patient, that's where patience comes in. Justice will always be had. It may not be to my liking, but it's one of my favorite sayings is the truth will out. So if somebody has misunderstood me when I've said something and they've taken revenge in their minds or in their attitude towards me, I won't try and justify it and explain and say and prove anything. I don't want to prove anything. I know that what I said was the intent from me within was good, if it was, of course. But if the intent was good, I know that I don't have to prove it to that person. I know that I can step away and just walk on. And they can think what they like. What they think is their business, not mine. And H says, I've never felt peaceful or content from being very small. It feels ingrained. Well, I can suggest that you take the Raj Yoga meditation course. And you've got lots of teachers there, I'm sure. Margaret's teaching and Manish teaches, I'm sure. It made the world change for me, I have to say. It put a new perspective on life. And I began to understand why people behave the way they do, why I felt so bad and so insignificant, insecure, low self-esteem. I had all those things. But over my 22 years, I've really looked inside myself and discovered that I'm okay. That there is a part in me that's really very good and very pure and very peaceful, loving, wise. It's taken a long time to get there, but I'm getting there and I'm still learning lots and lots. So it can feel ingrained, I must admit. It can feel ingrained, but we can change. We can choose to look at things in a different way. So good luck with that. And then I find criticism hard to deal with. What could I do to stop being so defensive when others are trying to help me, but I don't see that? Well, I came from a very critical family. My mother in particular was my brother too, critical of me. And so I never felt worthy. I never felt that. Actually, it's only in the last few years that I've really begun to feel I have some self-esteem. because it's all ego outside. If people say, oh, you've always been confident, I said, oh, no, I haven't. That was ego. I was like jelly inside. But now the reverse has happened. I'm much stronger inside, and I'm very soft and humble outside. It's okay. I just want to be me. So yes, criticism is hard to deal with, but people criticize because they're jealous or because they're in pain. And there are so many reasons why. And I can see we're getting up to 6 o'clock and I'm supposed to finish. Oh, thank you for your nice comments. What comes first, the belief or feeling? Ooh, well, probably everybody's got a different opinion on this. I would say the feeling. Feelings are very deep. They come up very quickly, don't they? And some of our beliefs are actually not true anymore. Some of our beliefs come from our childhood. Somebody said that and you believe it. And actually, it may not be true. It's a big secret. So we have to learn about ourselves, and you can do that through Raja Yoga meditation. I love to advertise it because it's made my life so great. Question. Am I allowed to go on, Margaret? No, I don't know.
Yes, definitely, if you want to. Yes, please.
It says, hi, in order to truly find a connection with God or the supreme power, does one need a so-called overnight awakening? Does one need an epiphany? How can I get this wonderful feeling and connection that you have with God? Well, firstly, you have to do the Raja Yoga meditation course, because that is how I discovered that God really does exist. I've always felt there was a power out there, but I never knew him, so to speak, and it's been explained to me so beautifully. And I know that he exists now, and I have a connection with him because I understand I am a soul. Rosemary is today's body, but my next body will be something different. But I, the soul, I carry on from body to body. And this is new thinking for a lot of people. And of course, a soul has a parent, and our parent is God. And when I build that relationship with him and I think about him as my father, my mother, my friend, everything, then I can let go of all those needy relationships that I've had. I was always looking for love and I failed to find it. I would find it for a bit and then it would all be a disaster after a while. And so for me, God is everything now, because I have relationships, I have friends, I have family, I have all that sort of thing, but I don't need them to fulfill me anymore. God fulfills me. And so, yes, you can learn to connect with God when you understand who he is. So here's another one. Hi, in order to truly find a connection with God. Oh, that's twice. So some people, oh, chat box is now closed. Okay. Have I answered everybody's question? I don't know.
Rosemary, I think you may have done.
Yes,
you may have done.
Okay, good. So we're going to go into some quiet time, and I'll speak out a few words and maybe take you into a space that helps you to connect with the Supreme. So sitting quietly. I start by relaxing the body, dropping those shoulders, releasing tension in the legs and the tummy, the arms, the hands, the face. I sink into my chair and feel comfortable. It's time to turn my attention inwards. To begin to feel what it's like to be separate, to feel the soul within the body. It actually lives in the forehead, behind the eyes, just here. And within the soul is the mind, and the subconscious, and all the feelings that I carry with me. I want to let go of all those feelings of discomfort, discontent, anger, upset. And let me focus on perhaps just one thing for the time being, that I am a being of peace. This is my natural nature. All that other stuff has been acquired over time. I want to bring these feelings of peace, of stillness, tranquility and serenity. I want to feel these throughout my body. As I sit here in contemplation. It's very hard to silence the mind completely. Other thoughts will come. But just let them come and let them go. Right now, be in the moment and have this deep feeling that I am a peaceful soul. I'm a sparkling star, a tiny, tiny point of light, pure, pure energy, emanating vibrations, of peace and love. This is my true nature. And in my mind's eye, I go to this place beyond the sky, a place of complete stillness. I feel warm and comfortable here, beyond the earth, beyond the sky, beyond the stars and the moon and the sun. In this special place, I can meet my Father, the Supreme Soul. He radiates love towards me and makes me feel safe, secure, cherished. My name for him is Baba. Another word for Father. I absorb his love into me. And I begin to feel uplifted. I imagine his arms around me, making me feel so safe, so secure. And this is a place I can come to whenever I want to, several times a day. I connect with God to fill me with power, to recharge my battery. This peaceful feeling that I have throughout my body makes me feel content, even just for a second. Because many seconds make up a minute, and many minutes make up hours, and so on. But it takes practice. And as my Father, he's always there whenever I want him. He is perfect and pure. And he wants nothing from me. He just wants to give. So holding these feelings, beautiful, loving feelings within me, I come back to where I'm sitting and come back into the awareness of where I am. Om Shanti.